Now, TrackFacts with Tom Amello and Nick Kling.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's edition of TrackFacts Live. My name is Tom Amello. I'm the host of TrackFacts Live and our regular TrackFacts show here on the network every week. To my far right is Nick Kling, my co-host, the handicapper for the record. Right now, Nicky is near the top, if not at the top, of the public handicappers during the Saratoga meeting. He's having a pretty good meeting and looking at it with a clear eye, albeit, Nicky, up and down is the way of racing.
Well, I was, it was clear the first 2 weeks. This past week, I've developed some cataracts. I think.
We need the X-Man to clear up the vision.
Need some X-ray vision.
Joining us today, we have a special guest. This is Ed Bain. Ed Bain is a handicapper on the Maryland circuit, primarily a simulcast player, but he's also the publisher of two pieces of information, database information. One, layoffs, and the other, claims. These are publications which delve into the people side of the industry, trainers. And Ed, welcome to the show. We're delighted to have you here. What we've said over the years on this program, we want to bring to the public folks who have products and information that can help folks make better decisions. And you're in the information business, database.
I'm in the specialist business. In racing, one of the tough things to do is to handicap the horse because their careers are so short. They race for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Then the problem ends up to be the horse leaves, and then it turns over. So what I do is track the trainer who's there for 30 or 40 years and get statistics on him and then play his statistics.
Okay, Ed made an interesting comment here, the notion of specialization. And in the age of simulcasting, in the age of information, public handicappers, selection makers, if you will, are really required to be generalists. They're required to make a selection in every race. But the everyday player doesn't have to make a selection in every race. Nicky, the everyday player and the simulcast player has an opportunity to look for spots where their own records know that their strengths lie. And you are now a specialist in terms of trainer data, and we're going to get into that in a couple of minutes. But I want you all to know that Ed yesterday singled out 37-to-1 Spendable, returned $76, and said it was kind of simple. I wished he'd stopped by the media trailer and told him how simple he thought it was yesterday. We're also going to give him a chance to talk about that and explain how he came up with Spendable. And there are 6 or 7 plays that you're interested in on today's card based on your data, and we'll give you an opportunity to talk to the folks about that. Remember, this is a live show. It's a phone-in show. We'll go to phone calls in about 15 minutes. The number is 370-1315, and we invite you to call in. Ask any questions you care to about the meet, and we invite you to ask Ed about his specialty. So before we get to that, let's talk a little bit, Nicky, about how the tracks have played this past week. Again, yesterday, a couple of big double-digit numbers on the turf course, and we generally talk here that when big numbers cross the finish line, you want to take a look at the context of the race and the tracks themselves.
Well, let's talk about the turf profile first, Tom, since you just mentioned the two big prices yesterday. I think as a general rule, in the last week at Saratoga, off-the-pace horses have been doing best on both turf courses, probably more so on the inner course than on the Mellon turf. But yesterday we had 2 horses go wire-to-wire in the 3 turf races, and I really think that was, even though both horses paid big prices, Tom, I think that was a result of the jockeys taking back, knowing that the course had been playing for horses to come from off the pace, very slow fractions in both of those races, and that resulted in reasonably logical horses able to go wire to wire. I mean, Ed mentioned Spendable. I know that I considered using that horse as one of my selections yesterday. A friend of ours, public handicapper Tim Schoen, liked Spendable yesterday. The other horse was a bit harder to come up with, but the fact is he was a son of a Derby winner unbridled and a half-brother to Housebuster, so although maybe not the world's best grass pedigree, certainly was a horse that had some class in his breeding. but I really think that the turf profile has been off the pace. I would be very surprised if we don't see the same thing off the pace again today, as long as the jockeys don't do what they did yesterday, which is wait, and more. Now, you saw in the feature yesterday, the sword dancer, 26, 52, 117, 116. I mean, ridiculously slow fractions, but the strongest closer was able to win the race. And I think that that race illustrates just how the course has been playing.
I will tell you, Quetehueo was a horse I let get away. I just somehow didn't want to believe that he came home in 57 and change in his last race. Wonderful training job by Michael Dickinson, and a salute to those who picked him and had them and bet him and caught that exacta. Nikki, we've talked about it on the program here before. Even Don Orlando has talked about it in addressing questions about bias. You know, he'll say sometimes that the jocks will get back into the room and have a conversation about what they think the track is, and then they'll basically create their bias, and he has to go out and say, well, there's nothing with the track.
Well, to a degree, I could agree with that, Tom, to a degree. Not completely, but to a degree. Now, over the past week or so on the dirt surface, and really since the opening 2 days when there was a strong rail bias, in my opinion, I think the dirt track has been playing, you know, amazingly honest. You know, we had a day last week when it looked like stalkers in the 3 or 4 path were winning. The very next day, it looked like pace horses on the inside were winning. I think that's the result of the way the race is set up, the way the race is developed, and the way the jockeys rode the track, and the quality of the horses involved. So I really think, you know, that with the exception of July 29th and 30th, when there was a strong rail bias, I think that you can pretty safely assume that the dirt surface has been honest for most of the meet.
Okay, we have a caller, Mark from Saratoga. We're going to ask you, Mark, to be patient for a moment, because I want to give Ed a chance here to talk about yesterday's score, Spendable, and how your data pointed you to Sonny Hines' runner.
It's actually fairly easy, and the reason it is that I tracked the first, second, third, and fourth race after a layoff, separated by sprint and round. I have the same 4-step procedure for claiming trainers. And then it becomes an issue of statistics, where the high statistics is. And for me, it's 4 wins or more plus a 30% hit rate or higher. When they have that statistic, he's an automatic play for me.
Okay, so once a trainer has proven the angle, and you get both numbers and statistics, it's sort of like a mutual fund. It's an automatic play. What's on the paper is far less important than the statistic that's evolved.
Matter of fact, it's one of those issues if you go to the well and drink the same water over and over. I make the same plays over and over again, and it becomes an issue of hit rate versus odds board.
Okay.
So I can eliminate them through the odds. I can eliminate them through a repeater as an example. If he had hit the race before, I wouldn't have played him. Figuring that there may be a bounce pattern, and it is a realistic thing to expect the horse to bounce off of a good effort. So I played him. Spendable was a great play simply because Sonny Hine is a great layoff trainer, and he does not get his due. A lot of people have some bad words to say about Sonny. I have nothing but good words to say about Sonny.
If he's sending you to the bank account, I would agree with that.
He bought this same horse, Spendable, off the layoff, which he's a 33% hitter. Simply means I need 2 to 1 or above to play him. He did not win that day, however. This was on May 20th. But he placed at 69.50, and he showed at 33.20. So I did have him across the board and made good money off of him then. He gave him another race, and then he laid him off, and then he brings him back on July 10th off the layoff and hits for 20.60. And then he shows up yesterday. After those kind of wins, knowing how Sonny Hine trains, it was an automatic play. It's just simply go to the window. Don't overanalyze. Don't worry too much about the other horses. Just play Sonny Hine on lay 3 round, and you'll see a $76 winner occasionally.
We have a good friend, we call him X-Ray. The X-Man suggested the other day that sometimes too smart equals dumb, and I think that's what you're getting at in terms of over-analyzing. One of the points that I'd like to make here relative to Ed's or the way Ed's looking at data, there's tons of accumulative data out there, and so large samples give certain trends, short-term samples give different trends, but what you're doing is you're taking the large sample of data and you're disaggregating it, as you pointed out, into separating sprint and route, and then first, second, third, fourth. So you're getting a much more, or you're zooming in much more than the large set of data on trainer tendencies allows.
That's correct, and the reason I do that is that when you have to look for a horse, the problem is going to his last best race. Once you do that, you're at the mercy of horse racing, because the horse is going to run as good as his last race may not be accurate for today's race. And the dynamics of racing, where you're talking about pace and you're talking about speed. And those things the guy beside you can talk about and tell you about. The guy behind you can say the same thing, and all you have to do is ask him and find out who the fastest horse is. Through trainer statistics, you eliminate that problem and you look for the improvement. You know that through a statistic, if he was 18% on lay 2 route and he's 35% on lay 3 route, you know the improvement is about to take place. Hopefully it'll be on this horse.
Two things. We're going to talk about a couple of trainers who have already claimed horses and those patterns in a few moments. But Nikki, you maintained your own database for a long, long time on trainers, and I know that you paid attention to the long-term trend and the short-term trend. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree completely with what Ed is saying, Tom, and I think one of the difficulties in handicapping, or not so much handicapping as wagering on horse racing, is trying to, ferret out the real nuggets of important data from a vast, wasteland of information. And people that take the time to do that, as Ed has done here, as our friend Jim Mazur has done with his various handicapping
and
books.
Lee Tomlinson as well.
Lee Tomlinson with his mud and turf statistics. Those are the sort of things that, they're percentages. And sooner or later, the numbers will catch up. You might have a streak, like any other thing that's dependent on chance, so to speak. You might go with a 30 or 40% angle, 10 races in a row where it doesn't produce, but then the next 10, it'll tend to catch up. I remember years ago, there was a baseball player who was a consistent 320, 330 hitter, and he was batting 240 at the All-Star break, and his manager was asked about it, and he said, 300 hitters, 300 will hit 300. Just think how much fun he's going to have the second half of the season, and that it's exactly what happened.
Well, what we're getting at here is the notion of finding a niche, if you will, or niche for Lee Tomlinson. It's pedigree. For Jim Mazur and Ed Bain, it's trainer stats, if you will, and for Ed, it's a little more focused. Nikki, let's take a couple of phone calls.
We'll go to the phones, and we'll start with Mark in Saratoga, who's been waiting for a while. Mark, good morning. Thanks for calling.
Guys.
Good morning.
Listen, when people go to the track at Saratoga and they look at the morning line, do you guys throw that out and pick the second or third choices? Is there a range that you guys find of odds?
Okay, let's start here. First of all, what is the morning line? The morning line is, at least for the NYRA circuit, handicapper Mike Watchmaker's assessment of how the public will bet the horses in the field, based on the data that he's taking a look at. I think that there are two things here. The morning line is always a good starting point. However, we've talked about Mark Kramer, odds on your side, or value handicapping, and what most handicappers have to learn how to do is to kind of make their own odds line to kind of assess the post-time odds or the movement of odds against their own assessment of value, and really as against the morning line odds. There are a couple of ideas about using the morning line odds, but Nikki, you respond.
Mark, the only thing that I would add is a public handicapper who does my work the morning before the next day's races. In other words, this morning I handicapped Monday's races. I don't know what the morning line is, and in my own work, I pay no attention to what I think it's going to be. I handicap a race. I make selections based on how I think the race is going to develop and which horses, in my mind, are most likely to win. So I in no way do I ever use the morning line as a public handicapping tool. Now that's completely separate from a wagering tool. As a wagering tool, you know, then it might have some value.
Well, Nikki, also though, once you've made your selections based on your history, you narrow the field down to 3 or 4 contenders. You personally have an X percentage of hit rate. So you know that one of your 3 selections, let's say, will win 40% of the time. If you're sitting watching the odds board and you know that you've made a horse a contender who the morning line guy had either made much shorter than you thought he should be or let go a lot longer, and then you're taking a look at the public odds. As a player, you get to assess that, yeah?
To a degree, sure. No question about that.
Ed, a thought on the morning line?
Yeah, it's generally the odds lines are set off of speed, plate, pace, class, current form, and other related factors. My style of playing is just setting an odds pie. It's a hard thing to do to set an odds line on every horse. It's easier to say, here's my contender. What do I need on him in order to place a win bet on him? For me, I do it simply, and it's almost oversimplified.
Nothing wrong with that, Ed.
It's KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Absolutely.
And I try to keep it as simple as I can, including the bet, which can be, you can make all the right decisions and make the wrong bet, and then you're in real trouble because confusion sets in, why aren't I winning? But on an odds line, if you have a guy, a trainer, example, I'm a trainer player, so he hits 30%, I know I need 5-2 on him. His odds line says he's at 2-1. Well, at a 30% hit rate for 5-2, 33% hit rate for 2-1, he's an underlay. I have to pass.
Okay, excellent point.
Next caller is Lou in Waterford. Lou, thanks for calling. Please go ahead. Good morning.
Look,
why are aluminum pads the best kept secret at the track?
aluminum.
Those announcements made at noontime or 11:30 when they go over their changes for the day.
Well, I think you may well be referring to the Richter scale incident the other day, Lou.
Yes, and Royalty yesterday.
Okay. The Richter scale business has actually happened in his last 2 races. In the off phenomenon last week, there was a late announcement that the aluminum pad was coming off. Now, I'll freely admit that, you know, I think this is the way it developed. Early in the day, I believe Tom Durkin announced that the pad was still on. Later in the day, he made an announcement that the pad was off, and I believe that came after Jan Rushton had mentioned in the paddock prattle that it was off. So in his previous start, Richter scale was a noontime announcement that the pad was on. Now, theoretically, according to the rules, the trainers are supposed to report that at time of entry.
Right.
So it can appear on the overnights and then go in the program. Mott was fined $100 for his violation the other day. Now, as I'm sure, Lou, you're probably well aware, that'll probably put a major crimp in Billy Mott's lifestyle, $100 fine. Actually, I'll tell you right now, Lou, I think it's ludicrous. I think that really the rule ought to be toughened up to this point. The trainer has to report the equipment changes at time of entry. If they don't, the horse should be scratched. Period. No exceptions. That'd put an end to this baloney.
Another question, Lou.
There was no mention made yesterday, but I don't believe about Royalty before the 7th race.
Royal Addy had been racing with the pads
But
on.
still, it should be announced. It still should be announced. It still should be in the program. You know, I don't know whether you were at the track or not at the track, Lou, but, you know, it may or may not. To tell you the truth, I don't recall if it was in the program. It should have been in the program, whether it's on, off, or the same. People should have that information. And as I said before, it's very simple. The trainers comply with the rules, or the horse is scratched, and they're fined, and a lot more severely than $100. Next caller is Scott in Woodlawn. Scott, thanks for calling.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning.
I got a few quick questions here.
Okay.
Let's start off first with Deputy Diamond. Nick, were you impressed with his run? Do you feel that race moves him up far enough to compete with the horses he's going to compete with in the Travers?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that Deputy Diamond should improve off the race, assuming that he's come out of the race with no physical ailments of any kind. As far as I know, as of this time, there have been none. This was the first time he'd ever faced that caliber of competition. I thought he ran extremely well.
Right.
I would go further by saying that when you divide up the fractions of the race into quarters, the third quarter, the pace call quarter, so to speak, or the turn time on the final turn was about 24 and 2/5 seconds. Deputy Diamond was accelerating into that 24 and 2/5 quarter and probably ran a sub 24 second third quarter, which indicates to me a horse, that's, in good form and good fitness. The question then becomes, will he have the class to compete with Coronado's Quest and Victory Gallop? In my opinion, that's going to be a very tough thing to do, because I think those are both extremely good horses. Right now, there's no question about the fact in my mind that they're head and shoulders above the rest of the crop. Although I will say the Grand Slam ran a fine race in the Haskell as well. I got to be careful what I say here, because I don't want to,
You have the distance breeding, Nick?
Oh yeah, Deputy Minister should be no problem. That's no problem whatsoever, Scott. I guess what I'm trying to say without saying it is that I'm not sure that was the world's greatest field in the Jim Dandy.
Okay. Next question, Scott, and then
it's kind of, well, I got two more questions, because one I have of your guest, but yesterday I'm standing along the paddock fence watching the horses go out, and as the horses are going by, I'm looking underneath the rear legs and seeing a lot of this white stuff, and I can't tell if I always thought it was salve, but believe it or not, I took the time to ask a lot of people that were standing by the paddock, do you watch horses to see, how they look? And boy, the differences of opinions that I got was unbelievable. It was everything from, well, because it's not an extremely warm day, this indicates that the horse may have some kidney problems, to it's the sap. So could you guys kind of comment on that? Because I know that you are the type that comment on the physical appearance of horses.
Scott, are you talking about
the white foam that shows up underneath the rear legs?
That's what's called kidney sweat. And on a warm, humid day, it's not unusual. On a day when there's little to no humidity, or it's cool, then it would be a negative sign. The other thing is occasionally you'll see horses have white patches on the lower part of their legs, the back of their heel, that sort of thing. Those are just patches for protection, but that's a different subject. Your question for Ed, Scott.
Okay, using your theory, Ed, in the 7th race we've got Teddy Boy. Because he's running his 5th time off the layoff, has he gone beyond what the statistics are that you use?
That's a really good question.
Okay, Teddy Boy is trained by Sonny Hine. He's ridden by Jerry Bailey. 7th race today is 6 furlongs. I'm giving you a moment. And it is his 5th time, and he won 2nd time off the layoff. Go ahead.
The 5th time I don't count. What I do count is consecutive races, which then how do you make the count to get through a consecutive race? Because you have to ask the question, which is my question, is how a trainer performs bringing a horse off the layoff if the horse is not sick and is not injured. How do you find out if he's not sick or injured? So I count race 1 when he gets to race 2, race 2 when he gets to race 3, race 3 when he gets to race 4, race 4 when he gets to race 5, but I do not count race 5, and all races are broken down by sprint and route, so that I can find the improvement angle on the horse and also make sure that this horse is physically sound to run this race, rather than, you'll see a lot of this where a horse will run off the layoff and then get another layoff, run again, maybe get 2 races and run a layoff. That horse, there's something wrong with him. The trainer knows it. He believes he's over his injuries or his sicknesses, and in fact he isn't, so they keep laying him off, and it ends up to be a bad play. So consecutive races is a way to find out if a horse is fit and ready to roll for this race.
Excellent point.
Good question.
Great
good
question,
answer.
Scott. Thanks a lot.
Next caller is Jerry in Albany. Jerry, thanks for calling.
Yeah, I'd like to know if Jan never...
Next caller is Jim in Schenectady. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, just a information question here. When they divide a stakes race into divisions, what happens with the purse?
Generally, what they do is it's more than half of the original purse, but less than the double than the original amount. For example, if it's a $100,000 stakes race, it might be something like $75,000. I'm not exactly sure, how they determine that, Jim, but from what I've seen, that's pretty much the way they do it. Anything else?
Anything else?
No, I'm a little confused as to why they don't tell you what they're running for. They split the the Lake George Stakes into two divisions. And I'm just surprised that they don't print. Okay, it's running as divisions at. I would think it would be a good idea.
Well, I think what they will do is when those that shows up in the running line of the horse's next start, it will be listed as various division. We do have a couple of open lines now for those of you that want to call in, and as I'm sure you well know by now, since everybody keeps telling me they get nothing but busy signals, we'll probably have to cut callers off at the end, so now's the time to call in. Waiting on the line right now is Bernie from Waterford. Bernie, please go ahead.
Well, Tom and Nick, I watch your show every week, all the time.
Good morning.
Thank you, Bernie.
And I think you guys do a great job.
Appreciate it.
I got first question for Nick there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nick, when you said you like Deputy Diamond, I hope you didn't have too much to win on him that day.
Well, actually, what I did is I played a pick three, and I was alive in the pick three with Deputy Diamond and Scat Mandu, and I had $0 on favorite trick.
Yeah, because I did like favorite. I would have that as that because you gave me a couple horses before that I liked the horse, and a couple of times before you gave me some horses, and I took your horse and I put him for second. Saw a couple of Zactus. I want to thank you for that.
Just remember that the best betting angle on the planet is top pick last, up the track, Nick off.
Nick off. That's it. The other thing, I'm glad you brought that up, Bernie, because I think we've mentioned on this show a couple of times, and I'm sure we've got some new viewers because of the Saratoga meeting. We're probably getting some viewers that don't normally watch the rest of the year. I'm a firm believer that people should do their own handicapping, make their own selections, and then, kind of meld them in with a public handicapper that they've had some luck with, or a selection sheet like the Wizards or Tom's. Everybody can have an opinion. Everybody has just as equal an opportunity to be right or wrong. Never don't bet on a horse you like because myself or Tom or the Wizard or anybody else tells you they don't like that horse, because no matter how good we are, we're going to be wrong 2/3 of the time. And, the difference between being good in this game and not being good is a very small percentage. So the way to use any selector's opinions is to blend that in with what, you think. And it sounds like you've done that and done it with some success.
Anything else? Okay.
Yes, we lost Bernie. Next caller is Nancy in Amsterdam. Nancy, thanks for calling.
Hi, Nick.
Good morning.
In the third race today, there's a horse called Felon.
Yep.
On July 18th, when he ran at Belmont, did he not run for Dale Romans?
Yes, he did. There's a trainer change, as I recall, to Phil Serpe. Same owner, which is actually, this kind of surprised me when I saw it in the forum yesterday, Nancy. Terry Raymond has been a long-time owner for Dale Romans. I can only speculate that maybe they've had some disagreement of some kind. Number one, you didn't ask, but I'll tell you, I don't like the horse. Phil Serpe hasn't won a race, since when I was still combing my hair in the other direction. And I wouldn't bet this horse with my worst enemy's money today, in case you were interested.
Okay.
While we're in that particular race, Ed, this is a race that you have a play. Why don't we move to talk a little bit about that, and we'll get the phone calls. Go ahead.
That sounds good. I have a play on the 5-horse, Carlisle Bay, Todd Pletcher. He's a 30% hitter off the second race after a layoff in a sprint. So his morning line is, 2-1? Unfortunately, I probably will not be able to make a win bet on him. But he is a good play in the pick three. And it is a good play because he shows consistency in his numbers and his efforts also in his horses. He's had 4 horses on lay 2 sprint this year. He hasn't produced a win, but he has 4 seconds, so he's worth maybe a place bet at and save the win bet.
Okay.
Ed, while we're on the subject, for the benefit of the listeners out there who don't have one of your books in front of them, what's your definition of a layoff? 30 days or more than 30?
Now, I use the Racing Forms information, 45 days or longer.
Okay.
And it's a cumulative data that I have done for a number of years, and I then, for my own statistics, and then I break them down other ways too, trying to find those nuggets that you need to bet on to be profitable.
Well, the Racing Form, when it absorbed the Racing Times, added the line after the 45 days, when we would normally have to go in and write our own line to mark the layoff, and so it sounds like a logical demarcation.
It's a great tool. Most people view layoffs as a negative factor, and in fact, they hit all the time. They consistently outperform any other trainer angle, both in the quantity, the number of plays, and also the mutual payouts on them.
Well, there's a question too. I mean, when a trainer lays off a horse who's coming off solid efforts, it doesn't. He rests the horse when he's race fit. That's not a negative. That's a horseman taking care of a horse, because not only are they running today's race, but they read condition books and they have plans for quality horses. And so, I mean, I love it to see a horse who was put away when their obvious numbers look pretty good, when they were pretty fit.
And it's easy to find if you know who does it. As an example, in New York, the New York circuit is a small circuit, trainer-wise. And out of the 280 sprint trainers they have in New York, only 7 of them can produce a win off the layoff with a 30% hit rate.
Let's say that one more time. Of the 280 trainers in New York, how many are solid off the layoff?
7.
7.
And 8 in routes, for a total of 15. And this is out of approximately 500 trainers. So
now that's talking about producing wins at a 30% rate.
Correct.
So you're talking about 15 guys who are reasonably reliable. We call them the IBM and the blue chips of the stock market?
Yes, you could. In matter of fact, you could go right up to the window and place your blue chip bet on them, because they are worth a play every time they come up.
Okay, let's have some phone calls. Let's go to the lines. And I'll bet someone's going to ask for a couple of those names before the show is over.
Next caller who's been waiting is Paul in Mechanicville. Paul, thanks a lot. Go ahead.
Hi, I just had a quick question. I've observed that there are 6 American flags that fly over the back of the grandstand at the Saratoga course. And I wondered if anybody has any idea what the significance is, why there are 6 flags in a row up there.
My press box man's going to ask.
I have no idea, Paul, but we'll try and find out. Next caller is Jerry in Manans. Jerry, please go ahead. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi, Jerry. Go ahead.
My question is about claiming races.
Sure.
When horses are entered to be claimed, and they are claimed, how come that information isn't given to the public prior to the race?
Let me clarify the question. You mean that the horse is running today, first off the claim, or that the horse was claimed out of the race? I'm not sure of the question.
The question that the caller is asking.
Today.
The horse is entered today.
Claimed.
Yeah.
And the public isn't aware of it.
Okay.
Like they do in harness racing.
Okay.
When a horse is claimed, it's announced.
Okay.
I don't know whether it's announced before the race, because I don't follow harness that closely, but I know I've heard
I understand.
during the running of the race.
We know the question now. Okay. I don't know. I do know that if you go into the racing office, you can find out who was claimed on a list at the end of the day or the following day, and it is posted as part of the information in the results charts, which are available either in the Racing Form or through Equibase. Now, I do not know why they do not announce after the race that a horse has been claimed. That might be another question.
Now, the answer that they would give you, Jerry, is that I believe, now I could be wrong, but I believe that the claim box is open up until about 15 minutes before post time, and a claim does not have to be dropped in until that time period is up. So theoretically, the answer that you're going to get, and I'll get it if I ask, is that they, quote, don't have time to determine if the claim is a valid one and that it's authentic, and then make the announcement. In other words, it's conceivable almost anybody can drop a claim, a piece of paper in the claiming box, but only authorized owners and trainers can claim horses, so they probably want to authenticate the claim before they make it public. Why that's different in harness racing, I really can't answer. But I will say one thing, and this is kind of a corollary to Jerry's question. I find absolutely no reason whatsoever why it should not be announced that day why a horse, or at least in the results charts, why a horse was scratched. In other words, the other day there was an off-the-turf race. I heard one commentator say that he talked to a steward. 2 of the 3 horses that were scratched out of that race were main track only horses.
Here we go.
Why were they scratched? The answer is that 2 of the 3 scratched horses, not necessarily the main track only horses, were vet scratches. I think the public deserves to know whether a scratch is a vet scratch or some other type of scratch. Next caller is Kristen in Saratoga. Kristen, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I was wondering what you guys think about Rumpy Pumpy today and Palm Freezer, because they both like this track, and I was wondering how you think they're going to do today.
Nikki, take Palm Freezer. That's
okay.
That's the 5th race today.
In the Palm Freezer race, Kristen, I didn't use that horse among my selections. I just didn't think that this was the right spot for the horse. I didn't really think that he would measure up. Let me just turn to the page while we're at it. I can speak to Rumpy Pumpy also.
I'll offer the same response on Palm Freezer. I think despite being bothered in traffic late, that in this field, Palm Freezer is at best an underneath horse. I used him in my selections as a triple factor only. I think he's got some tough customers in here in Perfect Imposter, who is a very snug fit to the race conditions. Perfect Imposter won a race at Churchill Downs on June 18th, and the race conditions bar a race since June 19th. So this one gets significant weight off, having won. Will probably face some pace pressure, but horses who appear to be advantaged by the conditions, they don't always win, but they generally run well. And there are a couple of other live horses in here.
Well, I'll just add, Kristen, on Palm Freezer. Now that I've gotten to the page, I know why I tossed out Palm Freezer. There were 2 reasons. Number one is trainer Joe Imperio has not done well at the meet. And my simple philosophy, which I violated the other day when I picked the Leo O'Brien horse, is to toss all the dead trainers. The other reason is
figuratively dead trainers.
Figuratively dead trainers. The other reason I've decided, until I'm proven wrong, to immediately scratch out any horse that comes out of the Skullbuster race. We'll go to Rumpy Pumpy, and I guess my answer on that horse would be that I just don't think she classes up with some of the other horses in this race. Yes, she is a graded stakes winner, grade 2 Diana at this track, but now remember, that was on the Mellon turf. They're racing on the inner turf today. She could certainly improve. Please remember what we talked about earlier. Don't change your opinion on a horse because of something we say. But I don't like her today, and as Tom gives his analysis, we'll end up with his pick 6 play for the day.
Oh, here we go. Well, all right. Well, Kristen, before we go to the pick 6 play of the day here, I made Rumpy Pumpy an underneath horse in here. I thought the horse made a pretty good middle move off the layoff. I'll ask Ed to just offer anything if it is Christophe Clement, second off the layoff. I don't know if you've got anything to offer on.
Oh, yeah. Clement is a 26% hitter off the lay 2 route, the second race after layoff in a round. He's produced 61 tries and 16 wins, 26% hit rate, so he's got a big chance to win. But the real sleeper for me is Ashford Castle, the 4-horse. This trainer, Albert Stahl, is on lay 3 route, the 3rd race after a layoff. Small stat. He's 4 wins for 10 and a 40% hit rate. And he has hit a couple in the past. This year he's only had 1 lay 3 route, and he's produced a place and a show out of him. Small, $3 and a $2.40 payout. But I believe that Ashford Castle for me is the play, and I believe it's 3-1, or is that
8-1?
8-1. He's definitely an overlay and well worth the win bet because of the 8-1 odds on him today.
Interesting race. As Nick alluded to, I would like to just take a moment here. I had a good friend stop by the media trailer yesterday and offer some hunch plays on today's card, and I thought I'd offer them to you. These are hunches for today, the eve of President Clinton's testimony tomorrow before the grand jury. In race 1, you can stand alone with Mistress, or you could box Mistress, Paradise Vice, and Don't Tell Isabel. The Republicans will probably send in the money on Pick Off. Today's Clinton Pick 6. Start the third race with Judge This Affair, add I'm in the Mood, Perfect Imposter, Blissful, Adverse, and Rumpy Pumpy. I am making a $2 play. We'll see what happens. Let's go to phone call.
If we haven't blown away all our callers, we may have Phil from Clifton Park on the line. Phil, if you're there, go ahead.
I'm here. How you doing?
Hi, Phil.
Good.
In the second race at Saratoga, I turned your show on a little late. Maybe somebody asked this question. This Love My Lisa was just claimed July 9th for $62.5.
Timely question. We got the guy to answer for you, we hope.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Horse he immediately drops him down to $35,000. I've seen this once in a while. Never quite understood what it means. I mean, the owner now would be taking, even if the horse won, would take a hit of about $11,000, $12,000 immediately. What does this say about the horse?
Well, I would offer that Love My Lisa looks like the main speed, although she's going to face some pressure here. Eddie, what do you have on Bruce Levine?
He's had 11 claims on the sprint in the last 3 years. He's produced 2 wins, an 18% win rate. What he did right was claim him from Dwayne Lucas, who has some of the best well-bred horses in the country. I think everybody knows. And he claimed him back off of a layoff on the 14th of February, and then Levine got him from Doug O'Neill, actually. Let me back up on that.
No, you're wrong. Yeah, you're going back to...
Right. He comes actually...
$62.5.
Right. He was claimed by Levine from Doug O'Neill, and then Dwayne Lucas, which is a really good angle on claiming trainers, who they're claiming from.
Okay.
So that way you can find out pedigree, where pedigree is, and also you get to find out what that trainer really thinks of his stock. When Dwayne drops him into a claimer, you know he's just trying to get rid of him for whatever reason it has. But they are also good claims, and there are a series of good claims. When you see it in the claim box, maybe 1 or 2, 3 claims, you know that horse is actually a hot horse. So you may want to go with him. But on an 18% win rate, I'd pass him.
I don't know if you understood my question entirely.
Okay, go ahead.
The percentage. Why is the guy claim the horse for $62.5, drop him in for $35,000 with a $27,000 purse? The owner's immediately, if the horse wins and gets claimed, he's out about $13,000. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think, Phil, I think it...
A horse owner, I don't understand.
Right. I think
that's part of the puzzle.
That's right. That's part of the handicapping puzzle. There are certain stables that are betting stables. This Roddy Valente stable is local connections. They do bet, probably not as extensively as some of the other stables that get involved in the claiming game. I think you have to know your trainer in this situation. And Ed and I talked about this before the race. To try and break out that statistic from the work that he does would, in effect, confound the data. So this is something that you either have to keep track of yourself or intuitively understand. And for example, we were talking before we came on the air about trainer Mike Hushin. If this was a Mike Hushin horse,
automatic.
This would be an automatic play as long as the horse was reasonable odds, say 2-1 or something like that. Mike Hushin has a long-established record of claiming a horse, putting them in jail, and then dropping them on the return and winning races. The reason they do that is because they get a horse fit, they want to win, and they're one of the larger gambling stables in the country. The ownership of most of the Hushin horses are gamblers. They want to cash a bet. They'll more than make up what they might lose if the horse is claimed with their wagers. In this case, I think it's an open question what the story is here. And to be very frank, I don't know what this horse is going to do today, but I would say, let the buyer and/or the bettor beware.
Before we go to our next one, you make an excellent point. Rene Araya is a trainer who has made claims from quality trainers. He generally takes horses from Lucas or Mott or someone like that and turns them into pretty good winter horses on the aqueduct circuit.
As did our retired and I believe now late friend Murray Guerin.
I think on the low percentage trainers, you want to do something very basic, and that's run a 1-4-1 test. Make sure he has one head, 4 legs, and 1 tail. And then try to see if you have a bet on him.
Next caller is Ron in Saratoga. Ron, thanks for calling. Please go ahead.
Hello, Ron.
One more time for Ron.
Reading the post-parade user's guide, the question concerning pace and class ratings.
Okay.
The pace figure, when they give it, is it for the horse on the lead at the half or 6 furlongs in a route, or is it the actual horse's time?
The pace figures in the post-parade are for the horse that you're looking at.
Okay, how about final figure?
Same thing.
Same thing.
They also talk about a class rating, which I can't find.
It's in the upper right-hand, I believe it's in the upper right-hand corner of the box, of the past performance box.
Oh, I see it now.
Okay.
Okay. And my final question is,
sure.
At what point in routes does the pace time go from 6 furlongs to a mile, or does it?
That's a good question, Ron. I would say it would have to be in races of a mile and a half.
Mile and a half. Yeah, mile and a half.
Probably a mile and a half.
Over a mile and a quarter.
Next caller is Paul in Schenectady. Paul, thanks for waiting. Please go ahead.
I'd like to say I enjoy your show very much.
Thank you, sir.
Informative, and you're doing a great service to our area here.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd like to ask Mr. Bain, number one, what's the price of his publication?
It's $88.88.
$88.88.
How did you choose that number, Ed?
Well, in my past, I owned a photography company, and I had a leader item of 11 by 14 that I sold for $12.95. And one of my salesmen came in and said, Ed, you should change the price to $8.88. So I promoted him after trying it out, and that price worked, and hopefully this price works with this publication.
Other questions, Paul?
Yes, I would like to know if Mr. Bain has a selection today that offers some value to the bettor that he would be willing to pass on to the
okay.
Actually, on all my plays, I put an odds pie, apply an odds pie to the statistic itself, meaning that if you have a 33% hit rate, you go to 2-1. If he's at 9-5, that means you pass today because he has to produce more wins than he's capable of doing. So anything that I give out as plays, all I do is set an odds pie to it, look up on the odds board, today's 8-1, he's a play, and that's how I set up odds. So the plays I have today...
So the first play you talked about, Carlisle Bay, is a horse that you don't think you're going to get your odds on.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Okay, in the first race, you've got the 5-horse here, Mended Fences.
Right. This is a good play for me. Albert Stahl. He's got a 32% hit rate. So if you can get 2-1 on him, he's 3-1, I believe, in the morning line. He's a good play to make. And you may want to also make this very simple. Make sure you put some place money on him also.
We talked about before we came up on air, you kind of got conflicting data, if you will. On the one here, Nicky, Al Stahl is a guy who hasn't won too many races yet, but this is a spot or a percentage play that looks like the right spot. There's another horse I'd like you to talk about a little later on the card, because it's a horse that I'm interested in today for a totally different reason. So perhaps converging angles might get something to the winner's circle. In the fourth race today, Ed, you're indicated an interest in Runaway Mary. This is a Barclay Tag horse ridden by John Velasquez. Let's talk about Runaway Mary for a moment.
Runaway Mary is Barclay Tag is based out of Maryland, where I'm from. Barclay, on the fourth race after a layoff in a route, he's hit 7 of his last 15 lay 4 routes for a 47% hit rate. It virtually means you can go to even money on him.
So it's not going to be even money.
No, he's not going to be even money on him. We're going to get. When you play statistics, you have to ignore many factors, and one of them is the speed, because it's a game of specialization now. And specifically for me, who plays multiple tracks, I play 8 tracks. I play with my statistics, I have statistics on six circuits, but I look for shippers, and I have a way of playing that allows me to bring up all the good plays for the day, which is an average of 7. Then I eliminate 3 and play 4. And it's a Barkley Tag is an automatic play. He just wins too much for me.
Let me just share. I'm interested in Runaway Mary today, primarily because she fits my part of an entry angle. In her last race, which was on July 17th, going a mile and an eighth in Allowance Company in Maryland, Runaway Mary finished 4th as part of an entry that was bet down to $1.70 to 1. Well, the entry mate that day was Bundling, who won the race. Bundling was in good form, won off by 1.5 lengths. The second place finisher in that race is Let's Get Kazi, who is also in today's race. Now, Let's Get Kazi jumped up to run second behind, I'm sorry, did not jump up. Let's Get Kazi was favored that day, gets beat by 1.5 lengths by Bundling, had a bit of a trip. Let's Get Kazi looks like a logical horse in this field. I'm looking for Barkley Tag to say that today is go day, what with Runaway Mary getting a workout in a race behind the winning entry mate. So we've got a couple of converging angles here.
And a third one, actually, which is even better. The Barkley Tag horse today, that statistic is on his New York races. If you go to his Maryland races or Gulfstream, which in Maryland I combine all his other tracks, I keep his statistics separate in New York. He's 1 for 15 everywhere else. He's 7 for 15 here in New York. So he's a good play today.
Well, there was a time when, I mean, he had like 7, 8 in a row. He was just unstoppable here back in the early 90s or late 80s. So the guy can win races. He can train.
And actually, this is a good race to talk about for a minute, Tom. So I hope our callers will hold on for a second. With the exception of Sunday at 1, who looks like she's overmatched in this spot, it looks like there are 7, the other 7 horses all look like they have a chance on paper. And so this is the sort of race where, a solid statistic can help you in the handicapping process. Now, I'll just, talk about how I handicap the race. On paper, I like 2 horses on paper. I like Tedar Shana and My Papoose. I also, as my third horse, like Runaway Mary. Now, when I handicapped, and I discarded the other horses for various reasons, which may or may not be correct. Tedar Shana, I had no problem placing third of those 3 because the trainer is still winless at the meet. So that left it between My Papoose and Runaway Mary. For me, on a handicapping basis, I went with My Papoose with Runaway Mary second. But, this is an absolutely wide open race. I'll be free to admit the main reason that I put My Papoose on top is because Shepard has been going well at the meet. Right. He's a master at winning these marathon-type races. But again, an absolutely wide-open race. If you can zero in on a horse like Runaway Mary, and I think Ed made an excellent point earlier when he said, people should consider backing up some of these wagers with place wagers. Or perhaps, and I'll just say perhaps from Tom and my perspective, Tom and I probably prefer an exacta underneath, your other selection in the race. Although in this race, a place wager could be a much better value because the money is going to be all over the board in this race.
Could I ask you one?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. You mentioned that, Mr. Bain mentioned that there was only 7 trainers out of over 500 that were consistent with layoffs.
That's correct.
7 out of 280, Paul.
Would he mention any of them? Or?
Alan Jerkins. Go to the bank on Alan Jerkins. He's one of my favorite trainers, and specifically when he ships them, he's liable to get 280 here in New York on a win bet and ship them to Gulfstream as an example and get $10. So he's one of the fun ones. Trying to come up with plays and names, statistic-wise, I track 4,000 trainers, separated by sprint and route. And I do this on 16 separate items. And if you multiply those 4,000 by those 16, it comes out to about, I do the same thing on claiming trainers, I end up with 23,000 subsets. So it's virtually looking for the needle in the haystack type of play. When I go to a trainer and I make a play on him, I'm simply trying to to gauge his odds, not his horse, but his odds versus the odds I have on his hit rate. And it's an easy play to make. My suggestion is please by all means order a book, and you'll find every one of them.
And I'll tell you right now, because we say this about everybody that we bring on the show, Ed, not you or Jim Mazer or anybody else. We firmly believe, Tom and I firmly believe that there's a lot of hard-working, talented people out there. And, they all have quality product. Many of them have quality products to sell. Tom and I both, quote, started, is in the trenches, $2 betters, rubbing shoulders with the guy next door. And this is the sort of stuff that we use ourselves. Absolutely. And that's the reason why we talk about it on these shows. And we wouldn't bring it on here if we didn't think it was of value.
Nick, I think the other point here is that Lee Tomlinson, as we know, and Jim Mazer and Ed, as we know now, are guys who came from the trenches,
right?
Who said there's got to be a better way for me, and they've solved the problem for themselves, and our marketing products that can help people. We couldn't kill the odds. Someone said if we said here, we said today Runaway Mary looks like an interesting play. I doubt Runaway Mary will be 2 to 5 or 2 to 1. We can't kill those odds on Runaway Mary, so we'll still get a fair price. Next call.
Next call is Bill in Saratoga. Bill, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to know about a trainer's workout. Some trainers will not work their horses out on a wet or sloppy training track.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if a race comes up and they want to scratch the horse, but he's stuck, what kind of odds do you think you should put on that horse to bet him, even though he has a pretty good sire and dam?
Well, I think right off the bat, Bill, as a general statement, I think you can say that trainers that avoid working their horses on a wet track, number one, they do it because there is a slightly greater risk of injury working a horse or racing a horse on a wet track. There's no question about that. If you're down to 2 or 3 horses, and let's say one of them is a Shug McGahee trainee, a trainer who has no problem whatsoever working his horses under any conditions, versus a trainer that will not work his horses on a wet track, I think that's, maybe the final piece in the puzzle. I think it's very difficult to generalize, though, and say, I'm going to throw this horse out or include this horse in because of that. But I do think, if you're down to, there's just no way I can separate these 2 horses, that's probably, possibly one way to do it. Next caller is Stu in Queensbury. Stu, thanks for calling.
Go. Ed, I have a question for you, and Nick, you've talked about a little bit place betting today, and that's usually not a popular subject, especially with people that do consider themselves professionals, because people say, well, you got to bet to win or make the exotic bets. I love place betting. Mm-hmm. And basically the question is, Ed, do you look at the odds that help you determine the size of your place wager?
I make the same size wager on every play. And the reason I do is that for many years I was just a win better off my statistics. But over the last few years I've learned that if you take all my statistics, and I do, the play being four wins or more plus a 30% hit rate or higher, I have a 40% place rate for those horses. And it has a $4.54 payout. So I have to take advantage of the payout and the hit rate. The stress becomes less when you're making a place bet, and especially any large type bet. And place betting is kind of out of vogue because of the value factor, but in fact, it's probably the best bet in racing. And the reason is that you'll hit a lot, you'll turn over money, you'll get to your churn, and you'll be able to play more races. Or maybe not more races, but you may win more. If you have a 40% hit rate, there's no reason why you should let that pass and not make a play on it.
The point, caller, Stu, that's a terrific question. But I think the larger point, or the more important point here, is that here's a gentleman who knows to the penny his return on investment and his hit rate. And we've talked on the program in the past about the value to an individual as a handicapper to keep their own wagering or betting records. Now, our friend the Wizard has been publicly talking about his wagers here during this particular meet with a bankroll, and he's kept track of it for the viewers on his show, and I think that's an interesting experiment. But we've talked about that. You need to know so that you can get through the downturns. I mean, we're all going to win fewer races or lose more races and rip up more tickets. But if you know what your hit rate is and you know what your return on investment is, you can get through some of those things.
Recently I had a 16 race losing streak, which is a lot because I play multiple trainers.
Sure.
And not all of them go bad at one time. And 16 races is, for my size betting, it's not really big, but on the 17th one, I hit a $54 winner and made $2,000 for the 17 plays, even though I lost 16 of them. So a combination of win and place betting. The place betting is simply a way of keeping you in the game longer and making sure you just don't tap out, and you have to avoid that at all costs.
Absolutely.
And one way to do it is to make a place bet.
Excellent call. Appreciate it, Stu.
The only thing that I would add to that is I agree with what Ed said. I think occasionally you'll get a field where it looks like there's a dominant favorite. You'll get let's say you've got Coronado's Quest as the lone speed going, a mile and a 16th at Monmouth. But Ed's got a 40 or 50% hit rate angle. The horse is 22 to 1. He's going to bet him to win. And if you play a place wager, you might get $2.40 if Coronado's Quest runs first or second. So you play the exact as the place bet, and you might get $12 instead of $2.40.
Absolutely. Again, it comes back to an evaluation of odds for risk and hit rate.
Anything else, Stu?
Well, one thing I wanted to ask specifically about, if you take potentially a 2-to-1 odds horse that'll pay $6 to win, very often you'll find a 360 or 380 type of place price, so you're looking at maybe 60% or 65% of the win price equaling the place price, as opposed to a $10 horse that'll maybe pay $384 to play. So I was just wondering if that comes into play at all.
It actually does. You can find that out simply by multiplying the place pool by your win pool to figure out what the percentage is if you can play them in the place pool. You don't want to make any bets where you're going to play 2, hit 1, and lose money on it. That's really a bad bet. The place, for me, I play many long shots, and it's an easy play to make because a statistic comes up and it's a blind play. And when you do those sort of things, like Sonny Hines' horse yesterday paid $17 on the place hole, which was low. I was disappointed in that, actually.
Favorite second.
Right.
Favorite second.
And the even money, the even money horse came in first, and it affected, obviously, the place price on him. But it's still a good place. There's nothing to complain about when you get a $17 place hole.
And the other thing that I would add, Stu, is that Saratoga is one of the best places in the world to make place wagers in the larger fields. You'll get, or even in an 8-horse field like the 4th race today. I mean, barring 2 or 3 scratches, I would be very, very surprised if, you don't get a $5 or $6 place price on one of these horses in the 4th race today. Next caller is Tom. Tom, good morning. Thanks for calling.
Wyatt, great show.
Thank you.
Listen, I'm a novice at this game, and I try to do my own handicapping.
Good for you.
Throw down the horses as best I can. But when you're down to the last couple, maybe 3 horses, what's the best way to eliminate one, or how do you get down to one, or what's the proper way to bet? Maybe that's the correct question.
Well, I think I'll give my answer, and then we'll pass it off because I think I have a feeling Ed's got an answer as well. But, in my case, at this meet, it's been the trainers. If you've got 2 horses that look equal on paper, and you've got a trainer that's hitting at 25 or 30% rate versus a trainer that's 0 for 20 at the meet, it becomes a no-brainer to me. The other is, another way of doing it is something like, a horse is their running style fit the profile of the track, that sort of thing. Another thing is Saratoga, a very, very big angle at Saratoga whether I like it or not, is jockeys. You know, the top 4 or 5 jockeys are going to win most of the races at Saratoga. So if I'm between 2 horses and one is Jerry Bailey and the other is Diane Nelson, and I'm a Diane Nelson fan, as many of our listeners know, I'm going to go with Jerry Bailey because he's going to win his 20% and Diane's going to win her 8%. Ed?
I throw out all repeaters. I have a thing against playing a horse to win 2 in a row. And specifically, if you see a win and no win right behind it, they just don't. A really, really good horse will win about 20% of the time. And if you're going to win 2 out of 10, you have to be sure that he's going to do it twice in a row. So you may as well pass him and look for a better value in the race, I think.
It's summertime when I make selections and actually have to indicate on paper or in public top choice, second choice, third choice. Thus far this meet for me, I've had a low hit rate with top choices, but a pretty good hit rate with horses who I've picked underneath, most often than not at pretty good odds. And so I often take a look at the odds board on my selections or the horses I like, and I'm going to let the odds board help me make a decision and then help me construct a wager. The stats large numbers, the favorites of the first 2 choices pretty much run first or second about 70% of the time. One of them is in the money about 70% of the time. So the first thing in terms of constructing a play or analyzing the field, if you don't have a reason to absolutely throw them both out and you're betting exotics, you better use them. And so in my construction of a ticket, I'm looking for what I think would be the most reliable favorite, and I'm looking to key that horse with a horse that I think has got a shot that's better than the odds.
Sometimes you can just take a horse who likes to win. Absolutely. I mean, there's one today that has 17 wins, and you may want to just say, he's a good play.
Golden Tent today is a horse that absolutely loves to win, second off the layoff. You know, Nikki, you and I don't really like closing sprinters stretching out an extra furlong, but this horse is sharp in the hands of a hot barn, and is really the one that they have to beat today. And
actually, I think Ed makes a super point, and I'll freely admit, Favorite Trick last week is another example.
Loves to win.
Here's a horse that wins. He wins, period. You know.
And he's on a terrific trainer staff.
Yeah, that's right. You got a
Bill
trainer.
Mott's one of the best trainers in the country. Matter of fact, Bill Mott so far this year has 73 races off the layoff route with a 35% hit rate. And he's one that all you have to do is apply 2 to 1 and say if he's above that, play him. If he's below that, do the place bet because he's 53% in the place hole. So he's an automatic profit in the place hole.
That's a powerful statistic.
I love listening to him.
We love it. Our next caller is James in Amsterdam. James, thanks for calling.
That's it. I'm just sending him my bankroll.
I got a question for Nick.
Yeah.
Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, Nick, I see you in Amsterdam all the time. I was wondering, what's your pick for the day?
My pick for the day?
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look. I'm bucking heads with Ed today because my play of the day is My Papoose in the 4th race. I made her my play of the day because I thought that she would be a bit of a value, not necessarily because I thought that she was the most likely to win. My long shot selection of the day comes in the 9th race, and that's a horse named Wild Explo. So my alleged play of the day is My Papoose in the 4th, and long shot is Wild Explo in the 9th. Both are on turf in case it rains.
Thanks for asking.
Next caller is Bob in Albany. Bob, thanks for calling.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for taking my call. I'm enjoying your show.
Thank you.
I am critical. I'd like to make 2 critical comments if I can.
We love them.
Okay.
We love controversy here, Bob.
Well, here goes the controversy.
Okay.
Your guest, with all due respect to his decision on picking the horse, he mentioned Runaway Mary. If he looks at page 2 of the Daily Racing Form, he's going to see that was a vet scratch 3 days ago. Why would that be a strong play? Secondly, Mended Fences in the 1st race. Here's a horse that maybe your viewers that don't buy the Racing Form, this is his 3rd start in 3 years. It kind of contradicts what we said before about if there's delays in racing, the continuous running. I'd like for him to explain to me, who reads the Racing Form, how can you make them 2 kind of plays based on a trainer win ratio off a layoff when he knows something more than we know about the vet or why the horse was scratched by the vet. And secondly, a horse that has 3 starts, 3 years, and a 500-day layoff and says that's a good play. I really would like to hear that explanation. Thank you.
Well, those are very good observations you have. For me, playing layoff horses are the layoff trainers who win give their lowest level horses, their maiden claimers, the same opportunity to win as their stakes graded horses. Bill Mott would do it. All of them who hit off the layoff will do it. They'll try to hit this race. Even if they're pointing 2 races down the road, they're going to try to hit this race. A statistic tells you that the man is trying to get this race and get some money for that owner. As far as the vet scratch, a stat is a stat to me. It's a 7 for 15. It comes up. He's 10 to 1, 8 to 1. He's worth a play. Doesn't mean he's going to hit. Doesn't mean he's going to win. But he is a play. And over the long run, playing these types of statistics, you'll be a winner.
And Bob, I would add that, as Ed mentioned earlier, it's strictly an odds play. You know, if the horse reaches the odds that he has on his chart as compared to the percentage, the trainer's winning percentage, then it's almost, I have to make the play. And I'll recite to you or recount to you the example of a friend of mine in Amsterdam. Tom and I have a friend that uses Mazur statistics as one of his 2 main handicapping methods. He never, ever misses a play that's one of his statistical plays as long as the horse is above the odds. He doesn't care whether, you know, the horse looks like he's, you know, there's 6 speed horses in a 7-horse race, and he just doesn't care about that stuff. It's strictly an odds and a percentage play. Maybe he'll lose today, but he knows that over the long period of time, the statistics will catch up to whatever, you know, result he has today, whether he wins or loses. So it's strictly an odds play. And when you're, in effect, it's almost like an accounting play. You know, you know, he makes the play, period. He doesn't think about it.
I understand that.
You know, so I mean, you know, so there's nothing wrong with applying what you're talking about, and I think that's where you have to make your own judgment whether, you know, you're going to try and quote handicap the statistics, so to speak.
Let me offer something too. In the first race, mended fences is one or the other. It's either an automatic throwout off that long layoff, or it's a horse you almost have to consider. A, because Jerry Bailey is sitting on a horse and he wants to win races, and B, no horse in this field has run near par for it. You got this is a negatively contentious, a negatively contentious lesser of evils race. And if you have to make a selection, or if you're looking for statistical plays, then if mended fences is at all healthy, he's never faced New York breds before, and could err. On the same token, this horse has every reason off the long layoff to decide I'm not ready to run, and so the odds will help you make a decision. I understand your question. It's good. It's a good point.
Can I just make
sure?
one?
Go ahead, Bob. Sure.
A plug, and I don't know him from Adam, but for the Wiz, that's why I really enjoy watching him in the morning, because obviously he has the time to. And once he commits to a pick or his feeling, he will go into detail and give an explanation why. Mm-hmm. So I can use that as a basis for my handicapping skill. I take everything into consideration. The only point I was trying to make, and honest guys, I like your show.
Oh, no. There's no controversy here.
I'm trying to say that people that do watch it, that don't have the racing form in front of them, these are important points because they might be marking down the horses that he mentioned.
Absolutely.
The way Mary is one instance I heard him mention. Yes, a validated reason as to why, and also mended fences. But people that don't have a racing form should know that this is only the 3rd start in 3 years for a horse, and that the Wiz never would have let go by in trying to explain a reason play like that.
Good point.
There's one other point that I think you should understand is that for mended fences, he has a positive and a negative. And the positive is that he's running today. The negative is he's got Jerry Bailey on him. The disappointment is he's a 3-1. If Bailey hadn't have jumped on him, I would say that it'd probably get 8-1, 9-1, maybe higher, who knows. But with Bailey on him is a big-time positive sign. He's riding for Albert Stahl, who is an excellent layoff trainer. And he's lining, my opinion simply is that he's lining this horse up to try to win today. And that's the question you have to ask. Is he trying to win with this horse today? And the answer to that, Bailey, coming off of a long layoff, which many people view as a negative, is actually a positive because of the Bailey connection.
Well, I thank you for your time. And
Hold on, Bob, because we want to.
I want to say one thing, because Bob, what you did is you confirmed what Nikki said about doing your own handicapping and doing your own work and paying attention to those people, be it at this forum or Michael as the Wiz, who you respect, whose information you can use to help you shape your play. I think that's an important point here. What's your question, Nikki?
A couple things I would like to add, Bob, and then we'll throw it back to you if you want to respond. As for the vet business with Runaway Mary, there was a winner earlier at the meet, a Mike Hushion trainee.
Buffum or
no,
Unique
the one
Upon
Leah Giramati
Unique
was on.
Upon him.
Unique Upon him. Unique Upon him had been a vet scratch out of his previously scheduled race. There may be extenuating circumstances that you and I don't know about. In Unique Upon him's case, it was that the horse threw a fit in the gate, and while there probably was nothing wrong with the horse, the vet felt obligated to scratch the horse to protect the wagering public. Now, I have no idea why Runaway Mary was a vet scratch the other day. It could well have been something as simple, and I'm not being facetious when I say this, that Barclay Tagg called up the vet and said, "My horse has got a cough, you're going to have to scratch her today." And he scratched her without looking for her. Believe me, that could have been the reason. Now, I'm not saying that that means that you or I or anybody else should or should not play the horse. Sometimes I think, you know, it can be an overanalysis, but it depends on what you have found successful in your case. Now, you know, the thing that would bother me about mended fences, and, you know, I think we've talked about this a little bit on the show, is that Albert Stahl hasn't been able to get arrested at this meet. And I'll give you a positive and a negative on that. You know, this horse would have to be about 122 to 1 for me to bet on him, unless the statistic was about 70 or 80%, because Stahl has been awful. I mean, brutally awful at this meet. However, having said that, I got batted in the head time after time after time by my Mazer friend at Amsterdam. You know, I would say, "Friend, I like this horse," and he'd rattle off a series of statistics why my horse had no chance to win. Then he would tell me why this horse he liked was going to win. And you know, the funny thing about it is, despite all the elaborate handicapping I would done, he was right more often than I was. And I finally gave up about 1.5 years ago, and I started using Mazer statistics. I said, you know, I may be stupid, but I've been beaten so many times by the statistics, I'm not going to fight him anymore. I'm going to try and use him. So, you know, what we're suggesting, Bob, and you know, we mean this sincerely, there are 22 different roads that go from here to Utica. The one that you take, you have to determine, and the one that somebody else takes, they have to determine. So, you know, while, you know, the points that you brought up were perfectly valid and may well turn out to be right today, they may well turn out to be wrong today.
Both these horses can come up a cropper, and both can go off at prohibitively short odds, and we'll be sitting here watching.
The last thing that I'll say, and then I'll shut up if you want to add something, Bob, is that, you know, believe it or not, we like to have people call in and disagree with us. So, you know, don't worry about any controversy or anything. Matter of fact, we would rather have people that disagree with us call in, because then it makes for a more interesting show. So
you would rather have people.
That's right. I love to argue, Bob. Go ahead.
Anything else, Bob?
Just briefly,
Sure.
I do thank you for your time. And secondly, I can't wish your guest luck because I don't like either horse. Very much.
See you in the short line.
Bob, that's part of the game. That's what I had an argument the other day with a guy up in the press box about something, and, you know, we concluded it with a smile, because That's what makes this game so fascinating. And, you know, and believe me, I really believe that.
I think that Bob would just like to shake your hand and says he hopes I win.
Next caller is Lenny in Albany. Lenny, thanks a lot for waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to know your opinion on the race yesterday, in the 9th race. Mike Smith rode a horse for Michael Hutchins.
Yeah.
Beside.
I want to know if he's going to be one of your horses to watch, because it seemed like he had all kinds of traffic problems. He looked like he was ready to haul ass, excuse the language, but looked like he was ready to win down the line there until he got cut off and steady like 4 times.
I don't think there was any question Bissett was well meant yesterday.
Yeah. The one thing that you and I don't know, Bob, is whether she would or would not have won. I mean, I picked the horse. The Wiz picked the horse. The Wiz talked about the horse on the handicapping seminar show this morning. You know, he felt, and we handicapped the races independently, by the way. We did not talk about that race before we made our selections. We both independently came up with Bissett based on the way Hutchins been performing at the meet and the fact that she had won her career debut on the grass and won it impressively. The positive and the negative about this horse is that, yes, she was well meant. Yes, she was on the move. Yes, it looked like he had a ton of horse when he had no place to go. The negative is we're not really sure whether that means she would have won or been second. And, the Wiz mentioned that he thinks that she'll come back at a price. I don't. I think that the Bissett is going to be an international trip horse, and she'll be 4 to 5 next time.
I want to interrupt and get in here because that's an important point. Almost every area of this game, speed figures, trainer analysis, trip watching, is gradually taking some odds pressure. Trip watching, and Nick, I know you're a race watcher,
right?
And quote, international trips, everybody sees. And it looks to me now that as we move further down the line in specialization, if you will, there are special kinds of trips that are going to be more important than a horse who gets stopped dead, if you will. And I'll talk about a winner yesterday. Red Cat, I think, yesterday was a winner at a nice mutual who had a trip, a subtle trip, racing in the vice between horses in its last effort. Now, horses are herd creatures, but they don't really like being in tight for long runs, and it weakens them. And horses who then come back and get a chance to run outside, or at least run more freely, sometimes improve off that vice trip, if you will. As opposed to, as you're talking about, the international trip, which everybody saw, and Bissett will come back at, let's say, 5 to 2, 2 to 1.
And I would add, I agree with that, Tom. And there, one of the horses that I selected today, if I can find the race, in the 6th race, I have no idea. There's a first-time starter in the 6th race from Wayne Lucas that has, purple pedigree, Blissful. Tom's pick 6 horse. This horse has wonderful pedigree. She may well turn out to be a standout in the race, but I put her 3rd behind a couple of other horses. I picked a horse in the 6th race named Trace Coronas, however you pronounce it. This is my kind of trip. The Bissett trip yesterday is an international, the whole world sees it trip. In my view, Trace Coronas had the subtle kind of trip that could lead to a price. Now, she is 6 to 1 in the morning line. I have no illusions that she's going to be 6 to 1. She'll probably be 3 to 1 or 7 to 2. The fact of the matter is that Trace Coronas was extremely well meant in her last start. She went off at 8 to 5 as the favorite, but she couldn't get the lead. She broke from post 10. She chased the eventual winner, Blushing Deed, who came out of the gate like she had been shot out of a cannon. Trace Coronas chased the fast pace while 3 or 4 wide the entire way. You look at the race, nothing happened. She just chased, nothing happened. But it was a fast pace. She was off what I thought was a golden rail that day. Right. And I'm going back to the horse today. Now, she may or may not win. I really don't know. There's another horse coming out of the same race, Minbar.
Coupled horses.
They're coupled horses. I had to make them my 1st and 2nd selection. Now, this is a race where I also think Ed's got a horse that fits one of his angles, Miss Jennifer Lynn, right, Ed?
Yeah, another Pletcher horse, lay 2 sprint. He's 6 for 20 and 30%. And the surprising thing is I ran Lee Thomas's sprint numbers on him, and he comes up out of El Prado a sprinter and out of Copeland a sprinter in a race that's just loaded with pedigree. But with the trainer angle and also a pedigree angle, for me he's a good play. He's coupled with Summer Crush, The odds are 5 to 1, so it might be a good play to make. He'll be a win bet for me at 5 to 1 today.
Let's take a look at your last horse that you're interested in, the 5th race. The only one we didn't talk about, Sea Launch, who comes in from Mark Frostad, Samson Farm. Nikki, I know years ago on this show you talked about Frostad and Samson Farm as an outfit that just ships in from Canada and gets that undervalued or overvalued U.S. currency and goes back across the border. So what do you think?
I love Mark Frostad's horse today. He comes from Canada, so I don't have a lot of stats on him. But unfortunately, the stats I have are only 5 for 10 and a 50% hit rate. Matter of fact, this horse, Sea Launch, he bought back and placed on her earlier in the year. This year, he's having a little tougher time off the layoff than he normally has. He's had a couple of hits, nothing big. When he does ship, a lot of times people know who he is now and they start playing him because of his name. But what is his odds on Frostad?
I think the
8 to 1.
8 to 1. He's another one that I'm looking for a win place bet on and hopefully cash today.
Okay, well, we want to thank you all for joining us. We hope that those of you who are new to our area enjoy Capital's expanded programming during the Saratoga meeting. I want to thank you, Ed, for coming in. I mean, this has been terrific. It's a joy meeting you. Thanks. And understanding stats different from the way we've talked about them. You know, I do some work in what they call school improvement, if you will, and they say, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, I shall, whatever it is, the valley, I will have the best data in the valley. I slaughtered that one. Without clear data, you're just a Yahoo with an opinion, and Mr. Bain here has got very clear data, which makes him far less than a Yahoo. I hope you get a lot of wins today. We're going to pay attention to it. We hope you folks have enjoyed meeting Ed. There's how you can get in touch with Ed, either to discuss his product or to purchase it. It's Layoffs and Claims, East Antietam Racing Publications in Hagerstown, Maryland. If you see him up at the track today, tap him on the shoulder gently and say hello. I'm sure he'll enjoy talking to you. If you have any questions for us, you can write us at TrackFacts at P.O. Box 554 in East Greenbush. Fax us at 477-5973. I want to thank Peter and Dino downstairs for the technical help. Thank you all for participating. As we always say here, we want you to have a great day at the races and get at least 4 to 1.